Cormac McCarthy's All the Pretty Horses may be his darkest novel, and that may be surprising to some of you because in All the Pretty Horses, we have the only real romance of any McCarthy novel between John Grady Cole and Alejandra. Because, yeah, there's some incestuous love in Outer Dark and The Passenger, and maybe Suttree fell in love with a hooker. But the love in All the Pretty Horses feels real. It feels awesome. You are floating because you are finally able to see McCarthy write in such a whimsical way about love itself. And as I've talked about before, McCarthy made a deliberate attempt with All the Pretty Horses to write something more accessible so that he could gain a much larger readership. And if you don't believe that, then ask yourself, why didn't he put The Crossing first? Anyway, but if you read the story, there are some dark elements. Of course, there's the knife fighting scene at the end, and Jimmy Blevins gets killed while he's pleading and begging, but we are desensitized. Those scenes don't really mean very much to us. But there is one scene in All the Pretty Horses that McCarthy hides that is really dark. And if you guys don't already know, my name is Ian, and here on Right Conscious, we talk about Cormac McCarthy. In the playlist down below, I already have over 175 videos on McCarthy, and that list is growing daily. And so we would love to have you here. And my hope is I can help you finish McCarthy's bibliography, and then once you're done, you can really dive into more of the scholarships and biographical aspects of McCarthy's life and understand those deeper. So in my first couple readings of All the Pretty Horses, I missed this also. And it wasn't until Jay Ellis wrote about this scene that I even figured out about it. So there are three main characters in All the Pretty Horses. We have John Grady Cole, we have Lacey Rawlins, and Jimmy Blevins. And at one point, they all get locked up together after Alejandra's father calls the police on both of them because he tried to, he did hook up with Alejandra and take her honor. And so they're all sitting in prison or jail. And there's this weird guard. And the guard would go and take, the head guard would go take Lacey Rawlins away. And this is what happened when Lacey came back. They let Rawlins go, and he slid to the floor and sat for a moment, and then bent slowly forward and to one side and lay holding himself. And right before Rawlins slides down to the ground in this quote, the captain asks him, "Why do you want to have these troubles?" And so what kind of troubles does Lacey have? Why does he feel like this? Well, now to reveal it, the reason he feels like this is because Rawlins is getting raped. And if you guys have read Blood Meridian, which I'm sure you have if you're watching an All the Pretty Horses video, the general consensus is that the judge rapes the kid at the end just because of one detail. And when the kid is out in the jakes, the judge gathered him in his arms against his immense and terrible flesh and shot the wooden bar latch home behind him. And so if he was just simply going to murder the kid, it wouldn't have mattered that, the door was locked behind him. They were in this kind of town full of vagrants and cowboys and killers. And so him just killing him in there wouldn't matter. But if you remember a little bit after that, some guys open the door and see the kid in there, and, conceivably he's been raped and, maybe bloody down there or any of these other things. The guys are like, oh my God, you don't want to see what's in there. And so if it was just a murder, they probably wouldn't have felt like that because they had probably seen something like that before. So think of this scene in your head. And now let's describe All the Pretty Horses and a very similar scene. And McCarthy actually was working on both of these works simultaneously. And so when they're taking Rawlins away, quote, the other guard shut the door and pushed the bolt shackle home in the padlock. Somewhat similar language. And so we don't necessarily have enough that I could be sitting here and making definitive statements, honestly. But as the scenes continue, we start to gather more information. So now I want to first talk about the judge. Not the judge. He could kind of fall into this category too, but the captain. So it takes a certain type of individual to be a rapist, to be one of these sexual predator types. And we're dealing with an individual in the 1940s in northern Mexico. And I understand that, Latin and Hispanic culture in general at times can be more eccentric, flamboyant, you could say, even in a masculine way than the typical white man, American. And I get that. But there's some details added here. For instance, he wore about his neck a scarf of yellow silk. So we have this captain wearing a silk yellow scarf, and he's in control. He's power hungry. And I want you guys to read and listen to this next section I read and ask yourself, does this character sound queer to you with all the information we have now? Because as we've seen with McCarthy talking about the judge's pedophilia with boys, adding a transgender character in The Passenger, which he already had drafts complete of in 1980. So he wasn't scared. He's not like out of left field that he would write about a gay character or someone who is bisexual or just a crazy rapist who will just rape anybody. He unbuttoned his shirt pocket and pushed his cigarettes up from the bottom in their package and took one out without removing the pack and buttoned the shirt again. The shirt had been tailored in military fashion and fit tightly, and the cigarettes fit tightly in the pocket. He leaned in his chair and took a lighter from his coat and lit the cigarette and put the lighter on the desk beside the pencil and pulled the ashtray to him with one finger and leaned back in the chair and sat with his arm upright and the burning cigarette a few inches from his ear in a posture that seemed alien to him, as if perhaps he'd admired it somewhere in others. And you could tell that he is into minute movements. Like there's plenty of descriptions I won't bore you guys with where he sets a pencil down, but he does it in a certain way and it's almost ritualistic. And now to the really good stuff. I mean, this is what sends it home because we're getting these descriptions all in the same section about the captain. We're hearing that his hair is nice and slicked, like he keeps up his appearance. But then he says of Blevins, and Blevins, remember, is much younger. John Grady Cole and Rollins are still, 15, 16 years old, and Blevins is younger than them. So he could maybe be 10, 11, 12 years old. And the captain says to John Grady Cole about Blevins, he don't have no feathers. And then John says, he what? He don't have no feathers. I wouldn't know about that. It don't interest me. The captain's face darkened. He puffed on the cigarette. And if you guys probably don't know this, but feathers back in the day and in that time meant pubic hair. So first of all, why would the captain know that Jimmy Blevins doesn't have pubic hair? And then why would he be telling John Grady Cole that? And then John Grady Cole says, I wouldn't know about that. It don't interest me. So they're obviously talking about gay sex. And then when he says that back, the captain's face darkened because maybe he was making a move. Maybe he was offering a deal because if you remember earlier, he says, why are you making this hard on yourself? While talking to Rollins, why maybe don't you submit to me and, let me do what I want to you? And so I think he's kind of testing the waters with John Grady Cole here. And it's so funny, McCarthy's so deep with the layers because on the page before, there was actually an empty birdcage that was just in kind of the cell with them. And if you guys love Cormac McCarthy and doing deep dives into his work, I run a Cormac McCarthy book club and a Cormac McCarthy course. The Cormac McCarthy course is already over 25 hours long. And we read usually 3 books at a time in the Cormac McCarthy course. And so every single year for the foreseeable future, for decades, because Cormac McCarthy is my favorite author, we will be reading Cormac McCarthy books over in the Right Conscious Substack, which includes daily office hours where you can talk to me about Cormac McCarthy and anything else, the Right Conscious Writing Group, and other book clubs and courses and whatever my own writing and whatever other big plans I have for the future. And so if you guys are interested, there's a link down in the description below, and hopefully I see you guys over there. And I keep saying this just gets better and better, but at one point before Rollins is raped or supposedly raped, which he is, the captain commands that Rollins put his pants down, and Rollins replies, "What the hell for?" And so I'm guessing we kind of understand that he's being inspected, and the captain is trying to see who he's going to make his sexual slave. And this may sound crazy to you guys, and oh, this is super far out, and oh, that only happens in Mexico, but the United States military in the War on Terror came under a ton of controversy for the practice of bachi-bazi. And if you guys don't know what bachi-bazi is, it's right here. It is a custom in Afghanistan and historical Turkestan and often involves sexual slavery and child prostitution by older men, of young adolescent males. And so after the U.S. invasion, it was then again widely practiced. Force and coercion were common. Security officials of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan stated they were unable to end such practices, and that many of the men involved in bachi-bazi were powerful and well-armed warlords. And if you look up here again, Mullah Omar created the Taliban due to his taste for its un-Islamic nature. And the United States government has been under controversy because U.S. government forces in Afghanistan reportedly deliberately ignored bachi-bazi abuse by the Afghan allies. This caused controversy. The U.S. military responded by claiming the abuse was largely the responsibility of the local Afghan government. And then when the Taliban regained control, they reinstated the death penalty for anyone involved in Bachi Bazi. And so while in our reign of Afghanistan, there are stories of U.S. soldiers having to stay with these people in the Afghanistan government or with soldiers in certain areas, and they would have these young boys with them, and there's nothing that they could do, and these boys were being exploited. So this is still happening in the modern world, and what a mind trip to think that the Taliban, who is not a great group of people, like Jesus Christ, terrible against women and many other things, were invented to stop that. And then when we came and kicked them out, then it just resumed again. And now that they're back in control, it's gone again. So pretty crazy stuff. And what happened? That's the question I asked at the start of this video. What happened when Rollins is taken away? Well, Rollins actually describes this. He says to John Grady Cole, "You didn't go to the shower room?" And he's like surprised. He keeps a white coat back there on a hook. He takes it down and puts it on and ties it around his waist with a string when he takes you to the shower room. So we have a hyperfixation on certain elements, which is kind of a keynote of trauma. And Rollins isn't going to say, because it's obviously sad and these are cowboys and it's a different time, I got raped. You know, he's trying, you didn't go to the shower room. Like, he's trying to ask to see if he went because he knows what happens there. And so this is just a sad element of the story that just a lot of people kind of read through. That, you know, it maybe seems like a torture scene or something, but it really is a scene of sexual assault. And when you kind of understand that in context, it makes the story that much more tragic, that these boys and their actions and them taking on Blevins and what happens to Blevins and their desire to get away from the kind of barbed wiring of America, to live a ranch life again, to, you know, be free and break horses and go to their talents. If I remember correctly, you know, Rollins and John Grady Cole are described as both having like immense amount of talent while working out on the ranch. And so thus is the modern plight of men and women and everyone who is now constrained because of capitalism and the increasing population and many other things. And so thank you guys for being here. Let me know your thoughts. Did you know about this? Did you not know about this? And I will see you guys in the next video.